We've got a caller. 1 second, please. Who's online, please?
Hi, this is Robbie Gillett calling from Manchester.
Hi, welcome to the programme. What is your question on tonight's Vote Who?
My question with regard to the international negotiations for dealing with climate change. So many people will have been aware of the UN process that happened in Copenhagen in December just gone, and the top-down nature of that, and the sort of heavy business influences that were involved in that conference in Copenhagen. Fewer people might have been aware of the conference that just took place in Cochabamba in Bolivia, called the World People's Conference on Climate Change and the Rights of Mother Earth, which had a much more bottom-up grassroots involvement in it, looking at grassroots solutions to climate change. And my question for the panellists is, can you see some way in which these two parallel processes, on the one hand the top-down UN stuff, and on the other hand the bottom-up grassroots social movement process, can you see some way in which these two parallel processes can coalesce to create a just solution to climate change?
Thank you so much for that, Robbie. You want to take this one first, Hugo?
Yeah, well, actually, in fact, I would argue that the bottom-up process is the one that's driving change. That's what's really driving change. Around the world, you can see that. Whereas multinationals like BP, for example, announced just the other day £3.8 billion worth of profits out of the destruction. We would say that bottom-up grassroots movement needs to continue, needs to be allied with the trade unions, but also it does need to have a programme to how it will tackle the top, how it will tackle the multinational industries. And we believe that nationalisation and control of those industries is absolutely key to making sure that those industries do come to heel.
All right. Well, we ought to mention that Dr. Shahrar Ali is up against three other candidates in Brent Central in that constituency fight. It's Dawn Butler from Labour, Sachin Rajrup of the Conservatives, and Sarah Tether of the Liberal Democrats. Now it's time for our next question.
Currently, the interest rates are in control of the banks, who don't have a very good current track record. Are you in support of allowing UK government to reclaim control of interest rates?
Dr. Ali, I wondered how long we'd go before we heard the B word, the banks. Take it away.
Well, it's totally unacceptable the way in which taxpayers have been treated and the way that we have had to bail out banks who have made reckless decisions with borrowers' money and putting it on the financial markets at the same time. So what we're specifically actually going to introduce when we're elected is a Robin Hood tax. So that is a way of curtailing these mismanagement at the financial level. And at the same time, yes, I do think that there is a place for bringing back control over those key instruments, because at the end of the day, even if the government of the day were to make the wrong decision, it will be more transparent and it will be accountable, and that they can be actually voted out.
But aren't they open to more backdoor influences? Some people would argue it's already a mess. Why give it to perhaps some people who are not qualified to make these decisions?
Well, actually, I would argue again the other way. You know, we've made as taxpayers £1 trillion available. It's £1 trillion. It's a huge amount of money to the British banks and to the banking system. We've effectively nationalised some of the banks and brought them into bigger conglomerates. And I would argue that in order to have proper interest rate policies, that we would need to set up committees that would take control and make the decisions about those banks. Committees of ordinary working people. Yes, the government have taken them back into their control, but they've not gone far enough. They've left them there and they've made them... In fact, the impact on some of those people who've got Northern Rock mortgages, for example, is literally to throw them out of their house because they can't afford to make their repayments. We don't believe that that's a proper way to nationalise a bank or a proper way to serve the interests of those. We think that committees of ordinary people could be set up, make sure that there's low interest rates for the ordinary person who wants to buy their home.
You might have a vote winner there, Hugo. Right, to the next question, when we took to the streets of London earlier this week.
Well, I would like to know that in the context of the global discussion about the recession, why it is that any of the political parties are not addressing specifically how they will address the issue of access to economics and access to finance of the poorest people in the communities. Unless you address that, you do not address the issue of the recession.
It's almost as if we are at the end and we've come full circle to where we began. This question of money and access to money for the poor. What's the Green Party policy on this?
Well, what we would want to set up is local community banks or credit unions. And, I mean, as our friend has reminded us, actually, a lot of the money that we put in to prop up the banks hasn't actually been filtering through, which is supposed to be a precondition of us actually bailing them out in the first place. Since we haven't much time, I think one broad brush question which I didn't get a chance to answer is to do with the grassroots. I think there is a bit of a difference here. Ultimately, the Green Party is not cynical or lacking in confidence about the ability of political institutions to deliver. The fact is that the fact they haven't delivered now and that there is widespread distrust doesn't mean that we can't get in there and actually use them for what they're intended for. So it's not just grassroots that are required, it's grassroots politicians in politics who actually have some way of actually coordinating people to do the right thing, not as individuals but as institutions and societies.
Hugo, is there a socialist perspective on this?
There is. We're not cynical about the... we think that people are rightfully cynical about the political institution because of the way that which they've been abused by the existing parties, the existing mainstream parties. Obviously, the expenses scandal is just the tip of the iceberg, and we actually say that our candidates, when they stand in elections, have to stand on the average wage of the person that they stand to represent in their constituencies. So that's our policy on that, to make sure that they remain accountable to their local communities. But we do think that it's important that the financial institutions, if they were taken under the control of ordinary people, new systems, in fact, new systems of government, new ways of working, that we believe they would then look after the interests of ordinary people. As I say, low interest rates for people who wanted a mortgage to buy a house, low interest rates to small businesses, so that they would be able to set up any ideas and initiatives that they have. We're not a party that are against small businesses. I think it's a bit of a caricature to say that we would support the takeover of all of industry in Britain. No, that is a caricature. We believe there is a space for people who have got innovative ideas to come and ask for small loans so that their ideas can be tested out and can be put forward under some proper accountable structures.
And very quickly, a vote for you would not be a wasted vote.
No, absolutely. People are crying out to actually have somebody to vote for that they believe in, yes? And, it always will be, as I say to voters in Brent, actually, there's many who will be voting for us, and there are others who say, I'd vote for you if. And then I just have to question what it is about that if.
We'll leave it right there. And that's all the time we have on today. My time flies. Please join us tomorrow for another special edition of this very British voters' election. It's Vote Who, and my colleague Henry Bonsu will be your presenter. Until next time.